Well, hello, new friends and old. I can't just tear down sacred or profane and not give you the non-dual solution, or tear into monogamy or polyamory and not give you a more definitive definition of what I think is what honestly would be described as right relationship, very literally, very mathematically, but also this is a very indigenous concept when it comes down to it. I don't think we necessarily have the right English words, and I think ultimately a lot of these thoughts get romanticized. And so the weight of the ideas that they actually hold um, fall away because we lose the words to define them, and we lose the ways to feel them. Really, we lose sense with our own body. And this is also a key component in the codependency aspect that was very prevalent throughout the geometry of relationships initial part. And I think even if you go back into that, the idea of transactionality is a very colonial concept. The ways in which we've defined love or trust or submission in the past has been very industrialized and colonialized. And so, through all of this, I hope that we can disturb those ripples and be able to pattern out in more elevating ways. With that being said, we're trying something new because I like the lighting. And we're gonna see if it works. But we did talk about the triangles of relationships, pink, and how all of these angles inform each other. Right? In geometry, a triangle is 180 degrees. So we're looking at about 60 degrees of separation, ideally. 30 would be subordinate, 90 would be an oppositional, which again aligns with astrology, which isn't just nonsense. It is also a very ancestral belief that we are of the stars, and not just that, but it is a very scientific belief that we are in a hologram. So, anyway, when we were talking about this, there was an example that came up where both parties, right, want to branch out, want to do their own thing, yada, 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 and whether or not that can actually be a stable environment. That can, but that has to reflect the same cause. Because rather than hierarchy, we want dimensionality, where all of these angles agree. And that is where things start to grow. But so if we can get this dimensionality and an alignment, because beyond hierarchy, and I talked a lot about planes, and ultimately you can replace those two words, trying to elevate to a certain plane, trying to establish a hierarchy, etc., etc. You can kind of swap that language, but what was I saying? Oh, you find a mutual plane which is in agreement with a singular choice, with a unified choice or ideology or goal. In polyamory, sure, yes, that's that you want to branch out, but that's also checking in and setting boundaries and yada yada yada. In any relationship, that is the choice to be in it. That is the active choice to choose this relationship every day. And I feel like with polyamory, that tends to be thrown to the wayside because we establish hierarchies of, the primary partner, et cetera, or, the living mate, or whatever language people have now for it. And that is ultimately not the same choice. In which case you have, rather than these 2 points coming together, you kind of have triangles kind of doing whatever they want, branching out to whatever patterns they want, rather than where they initially agreed to be, which is like a misidentification of the pattern. which, if I recall, is actually pretty parallel with like cellular biology and cancer cells. And the way they pattern is like a misidentification of the pattern that they're spitting out. And that is in recurrence. So we find a parallel plane. Even in arguments, that's okay. What do we want to come of this? And again, the things that I've learned in Platonic relationships, in conflict, the choice is this enough to leave or stay? And that's not an ultimatum, that's in agreement, that's in alignment, because we have parallel axes with this. And that's not just you and a goal, or you and a person, or you and whatever goal you've agreed on with this person. That is very much your ethos and your eros, uh, your logos and your pathos, even, because your logic and your passion. This is, I think, where people miscommunicate with their own bodies, and you find people saying they're like, oh, down there does all the talking, or they're led by their body in decisions. So while we have this axis, we have these other parallel axes. That is then again why I said that it's not that you cannot love if you do not love yourself, but it's that these axes are not necessarily in alignment, and so you're more likely to have misidentified growth. Does that make sense? And that is really like your logical left brain, your energy body and passion, your ethos and your eros, which is very much along the sacred and profane axis as well. What are uh, the ways in which you ground yourself to find your north, or to find your uh, your due north, your true aspect in this relationship. Because while it is fun to be all yes and, that can get really murky, and that requires some level of kinesthetic sense, like where you are in space, where you are in your body. Like, sure, we can yes and things, but a lot of times that's also, I think, where we find ourselves in situations where we take in a lot of medicine, but we're not actually integrating it, or we take in a lot of medicine, but don't actually integrate it into the relationship. Take in a lot of information, don't actually integrate it. Take in a lot of experience, don't actually integrate it. And again, that comes back to those initial axes of the self, and those patternings. In polyamory, dealing with the self can also deal with contempt for whoever is new, envy, jealousy. Um, they are the same, but I feel like one is a little bit more intense, or deep rooted, or actionable. And so we have these cycles of patterns that we can get stuck in. A lot of times, because of situations like this, that is a manipulated byproduct, which is where we get into, again, how polyamory can exert itself a lot like polygamy, because we have a misunderstanding of the sacred and the profane, and of who we are, and our kinesthetic sense to ourselves in space, in time, and as we grow. Um, let's see, what else? What else? It's in religion, it's in narcissism, and it's very much also prevalent in New Age ideologies that replicate those same patterns. Um, which I think is because we've lost a lot of our own body knowledge, our own sensory knowledge, our own understandings of love and what that means in languages. In Talagi, Kakeyu is I love you, and Akeyu is woman. So your partner, or this counterpart to your role in honoring and protecting this relationship, whoever that may be, um, is of love. This is a choice of love, and if your choosing isn't representative of love, then is it representative of your partner? And these are macro concepts that really just are disserviced by their dissolving to be palpable. Um, and I'm here to add that perspective to the conversation. Um, Conversely, I promise you a solution, or what I think would be the Platonic ideal, right? Because this is kind of where we want to go. In that, I think, is again our understanding of masculine and feminine. We're going to give ourselves the magical one. The insatiable, consuming, overpowering, um, domineering, consuming aspect of the masculine, aspect of whoever, whatever, the ideal. I think a lot of femininity is very much about replicating this, and that is, in fact, a survival mechanism. Um, but stereotypically, we think this person brings wealth and prosperity and is the bacon, whatever, whatever. And this person like cooks, cleans, and bakes cakes, right? Stereotypically. And nothing wrong if you do either of those things, right? However, again, that idea of, okay, if we're going to branch out to some goal, I have to consider what's going on here. We see that dimensionality kind of existing, right? We're branching out. Whether or not it's polyamorous or monogamous. This party is also doing that. Um, I think that's been misinterpreted as dowries and such in the past, where it was like, okay, this is how much money I can offer in order to purchase this person for legacy. Again, property, transactionality, colonial concept. But what if it was more about the ways in which we saw gift giving? Yes, the idea of the feminine is about the gift of life, or being able to be the breath of life in an idea, in a concept, or in life bringing, or what have you, the pulse of many things. Then the masculine is very much the gourd that holds that sound. Is very much the resonator for a lot of those things. So he's got to be able, or they've got to be able to match that frequency and hold that frequency. And a lot of times people think that the feminine is just too much. Um, but rather than it just be this transactional quality, what if even the most vanilla relationship was also about this offering of stability and of comfort, and of an invitation for expansion, really. And how fertile of grounds does the masculine role in any relationship, uh, in inner or outer? How fertile do those grounds, do they till those grounds to be for expansion, for growth, for good harvest? Um, that is very much how safe of a space that they can make it too. And too often are we like, oh, she's my piece, da 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 da. No, you also have to be your own peace. You have to be capable of your own capacity for peace. That's what you also radiate and resonate with within the relationship. That's how we can find an equilibrium, so that all sides are strong and strengthened, right? In which case, that also looks very submissive, or what people would call submissive, where this person's affection is in offering of stability, of ease, of uh, learning, of listening, of growth. Um, and it's not submissive, it's about their capacity to grow, it's about their capacity to be willing to grow as well, and willing for growth, which would ultimately be the mutual decision in that context, which is, I think, is also the illusion in BDSM community, that it is just power, but it is not about taking power. It is about empowering across the board. In which case you have this and this, ideally, and this. ideally, rather than taking power away in order to. It's a very colonizer mindset to perpetuate this I am empty, and so you shall be too. Or I will have more light if I blow yours out and I extinguish yours. Those are cycles of trauma, and when wielded in such a replicating way, does really dig those fingers deep into the earth rather than being able to acknowledge it for the growth that is capable in that kind of ground, the growth that any relationship is capable of that kind of ground. Because again, similarly, I think the sacred and the profane are all the same, but I also think that vanilla and not so vanilla, we'll just call it chocolate for YouTube. Vanilla and chocolate relationships are very much the same because it is about communication and it is ultimately about boundaries. Um, this is this is the ways in which the other person actively has the power to speak up, is empowered to speak up, is empowered to be embodied, is empowered to, code when things get weird, is empowered to open up to their partner, is empowered to, let their partner know when things are, awry or not necessarily sitting right, or when they just have something on their mind that may or may not be a thing that even needs to be brought to the table. But that's that stable expansion. A similar parallel is people's idea of um, of relationships having to be either exciting and spontaneous or comfortable and predictable and safe, or familiar, or whatever it is. That's often kind of given as the binary. There's the good girl and the bad girl, or the good guy and the bad guy. Whatever the tropes are. But in actuality, it's never that we're choosing one or the other. It's that ideally a stable relationship can have both. Ideally, and again, either vanilla or chocolate relationships, the person that you explore with the most is often the person that you feel the most safe with. And the times that you try the hardest things or the scariest things are often when you're with people that you feel safe and loved and reassured with. And these are also the ways in which we can learn to self-soothe ourselves, so that we have multiple gates of inclusion. And much like our chi, much like our energy chakras, much like flow of breath, these multiple sort of locks and cycles of filtration, so that we can engage in relationship, platonic, monogamous, or otherwise, and come from a solid perspective and a solid point of growth, that we offer our highest selves, that we offer our most honorable selves, and that we offer our most honest selves to the relationship. It's not that we offer our best selves, it's that we offer our most honest selves. And even in highest self, not in the hierarchy, we offer our most honest self, the self that aligns across multiple axes, of who we are and what we want in a relationship, um, rather than be thwarted one way or the other, and pushed into or pulled into a different triangulation or narrative. This is a key point of gaslighting that I also went through in the last one, so I'm not going to do it again. Let's see. What else have I not gone over? Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything right now. But if you like this better than the projector, because it's kind of closer, but then let me know. But get your heart right. Get your arrows right. Get your arrows right. Get your energy right. So that we can be in better alignment with how the world's supposed to be, with how we ought to be relating to each other, with how we just may have been relating to each other in a world pre-colonization, in the way we were considering, even in conversation, to hold enough space for the other person. Um, and I think too often we get too excited. And I know I said in the last one, like self control, but it's not like strict discipline either. It doesn't feel like control when you are aware of your impact. Um, it's kind of like edging yourself all the time if you're trying to find new partners. Um, and finding the right, time and place where it aligns unanimously, and ultimately uplifts everybody on board, rather than just uplifting one misidentified identity. Um, yeah, I do dream of a fun, happy, very vanilla chocolate swirl kind of world where we understand who we are in love, and that it is, in fact, of us, and that we take great responsibility and great honor and great compassion with the ways in which we love and touch other lives. Um, and the more we can decolonize our sexuality, I think the freer we'll be. The freer our minds, the freer our bodies, the freer our sexualities will be, so that we can relate to ourselves and better relate to others, and find healing and reciprocity in that, rather than these contentious cycles of consumption. But yeah, go out there, love a little, live a little, but understand how powerful your love is and wield it responsibly, so that love continues to be a beautiful and thriving and growing thing. And so that we can start patching up some hearts from unnecessary uh, pain and suffering and confusion and misidentification. Get very clear about what you want and how you define it. And don't let other people's slick terms obfuscate what those meanings really feel like to you. Until next time. Cont'd. Mwah.